Saul. Saul, Johnathan, David, Samuel, and then so David, oh, and Jesus. David, he had a problem with Saul. Well, I mean, Saul had a problem with him. Jesus had a problem with Saul. Aren't we talking about the same Saul? Isn't Saul the king of Israel? Isn't he Paul, the Apostle Paul? I don't know. I guess I never put two and two together on this one. How is it that David, running from Saul because Saul's persecuting him from city to city, and then Jesus, the risen Christ, says, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? David didn't say those words specifically, but he meant it. He meant the same thing. Saul, why are you persecuting me? How is it that that Christ is the seed of David, the offspring of David is Christ? So David is a king on earth. Christ is a king in heaven. Saul was persecuting David. Saul was persecuting Jesus. Saul turned into Paul the Apostle. How are we talking about the same Saul? Because if Jesus is saying Saul as in the Old Testament and then Saul as in the New Testament, maybe that's why he's saying Saul, Saul. David's running from Saul. There's a history between David and Saul. Saul always constantly barking out threats against David. And at one point, he even says to David, David, my son, is that your voice that I hear? And I think right before that, David was saying something like, my father, and then Saul, like that, like it, as in that's his father. Like David is Saul's son. I don't know how. I thought he was Jesse's son. Is Jesse the father, I don't know, of the YouTube program, or his actual father? And then, so who's the father of Jesus? He obviously was birthed from seed, from somebody. It wasn't just out of the blue birth. It was, even though Christ becomes and is what do you call it? Self-existing, eternal God. That lane's a little slow. I'm just trying to piece these pieces of the puzzle together, because I look at my own life and I look and I say, who is Saul on the YouTube platform? But if I'm saying who's Saul, then I must be comparing myself to somebody in the Bible with a similar story that went through the same thing, being persecuted by Saul. Now, David, which one is it? David, his son is Jesus Christ from the seed. But if that's the case, then how come Jesse is his father? And if Jesse is his father, then how come Saul says, "My son David"? Is that your voice? After David says, "Saul, my father is the I forget how to paraphrase it, but something along those lines, is the anointed king." At what point? Well, on the road to Damascus. That's when Jesus said to Saul twice, "Why are you persecuting me?" And then he turns into Paul the Apostle. So it sounds like a 7-year period. The first 3.5 years, Saul is persecuting Jesus. And then once after his death and resurrection, then he comes to him in the risen form and calls him out by his name, calling him Saul. And then in the Old Testament, that David was having the same problem that Christ was having with the same person. So how is it that 1,000 years passes by just like that? 1,000 years passes by before the birth of Jesus is David, the reign of David. Now, if you take 1,000 days, a day is a year, then it starts to make sense. Then a day is a year, because you don't be ignorant of one thing. One day with the Lord is as 1,000 years, 1,000 years one day. And at times in the Bible, if it's biblical prophecy, a day equals a year, and a year a day, and a day equals 1,000 years, and 1,000 years equals one day. So it's all intertwined like that. So 1,000 years is 1,000 days. So the birth of Christ can also be the first time he was born in the flesh, then a birth into a system like the YouTube platform. His spirit, the anointed spirit, which is called Christ, is birthed into the YouTube platform. And then there's a birthing of like his public ministry. Now how else could the entire world know about Jesus back then? How was he able to know what Lazarus was doing, the apostles. How did Jesus know so much when he had zero surveillance and he was just by himself with no microphone, no recorder, even though everything was recorded? So the perception is no technology, not even a horse. He rode in on a donkey. That's it. Just a jackass. He rode in on a jackass. And I wonder if that jackass is Goliath that David slew. Like, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. Because the jackass that I know of when I first started was Matthew Daly. I don't know if he was considered a Goliath, but to me, I took him on. I was live. I was live with him because he was doing a live, and I was living his live and answering his questions as I go, or whatever. Being crucified all the way through. And so he, as the character Matthew Daly behind that mask, he has the horse teeth too, to look like a jackass. He looks like a donkey. It's just the way you guys made up the outfits. I don't know how many of you are more other people, like how many characters each person is. But even so, in the Bible, if you're 4 different characters and Christ comes across 4 different characters in the Bible and it's the same person, well, it still counts for the 4 characters. Because if one person is able to play all those characters, then that's who he was talking to. But Saul, and then he said, my God, why is thou forsaken? And then he says, my Lord Saul, the anointed. When he had a chance to kill him, when he cut his robe short, when he cut a piece of his robe, and even before Alistair Begg was explaining that, I was thinking of what it meant, and to me it meant like a robe, your royal garment, your position, your throne, your estate, your kingdom. And David cut off a piece of it. And Saul would always torment and threaten and try to kill David, just like Stephen James would always attack me and with threatening words, and you're going to be slain, and Robin's going to die, and you're going to be a great man, Robin, when you're dead, and you're going to see darkness and swirling downhill, and all these threats, man, all these threats. All these threats. And then you got Johnathan from Denver. You got John. You got Wise. You have a Wise guy, the third, and you got Johnathan Kleck. So Johnathan Kleck, to me, he's like my best spiritual friend, meaning the one that I don't actually talk to directly. He's more like that. He's more like a spiritual best friend. Justin, I considered him my best friend in the beginning, but it wasn't that he was my best friend. It's just that he was my only friend. And he was my only friend who was sticking up for me and not turning against me when everybody else did. But I didn't know at the time that he was an agent from the inside. I didn't know that a bunch of people, I didn't know that so many people would collaborate with each other and come in my direction when I am absolutely nobody. So when all these people came my direction, they started giving me all this attention, negative attention. I started to embrace it fairly quickly. I really did, because some of the claims are so ridiculous that what it did was it got me to rise up and characterize them and defecate on their character. And that became fun. It became a way of eliminating the disgust of these backstabbing, lying snakes that I didn't even know they were snakes at the time. So, for a long time, Justin was my best friend as I considered him. And I also thought he was Stephen James DeShawn's son, like Saul and Johnathan. And then time went by. I don't talk to him unless if I'm talking to John from Denver behind a John from Denver mask, and you're really Justin Michaels himself. But for the sake that that's not the case, your name's John, right? Is it Johnathan, John, Johnny? I'm sure it's Johnathan. That's most people's names are Johnathan, right? It's just short for John. You're like a real good buddy to me on YouTube, because you had, no matter regardless, agent or not, there's agents on the YouTube platform, and some are good and some are bad, and some are half and half and half. So if there's 72 good, there's 72 evil twins. And then just like in the Bible, I gotta go by, I can't go by spiritual friends, like what you're saying spiritually, because these things are recorded and written down as to what Saul actually said to David. Like what are these things that Stephen James DeShawn actually said to Robin Henry Tees? I'm going to be slain was one of them. Many insults. I'm stupid and this and that. And I mean, I got a litany of, I got sound bites. I got soundtracks from Stephen James, the best of sound bites, and I haven't even gotten to all of them. He said I'm king, whether you want to believe it or not. And that's like Saul. I wrote Steve a letter within about the first year after I stopped talking to him over the phone, in person, face to face. I wrote him like 7 pages, and the first thing I said was, "Greetings, King. You remind me of Paul, who used to be Saul." Like, in other words, you remind me of Saul, but you've turned into Paul. Even back then, I was saying that because it was because I knew you were acting like you didn't like me, acting. But then again, maybe you really truly hated my guts, just like Saul hated David. Or maybe Saul knew scripture, and so he was, everybody wanted a king, so he became king. And then he comes across David, right? And he's like, oh, okay, whatever, this is scripture. I know I'm just supposed to act this out. Or no. Or yeah, you're going to act it out. And you just think, whatever, it's not even anything. So here we go. And then it starts. And then, like Steve, with me, he would start getting frustrated at me because I have been relentless in pursuit of defending my honor, because he's slandering me, saying I'm slandering him when he's the bullshit liar. And the same thing with Saul. It's like, my goodness, I wrote a letter to Steve saying, "Greetings, King Saul, Paul." And then another thing with Saul, or with Paul, Derek Bro said on the show with Donut, I think, he said, Paul the apostle. It's like the same thing, robbing Peter to pay Paul. Robbing Peter, pay Paul. So he was saying that Paul was basically trying to take Peter's position as if he's Peter, the one who has the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Peter, like Johnathan Click, has like the keys to the kingdom of heaven as well. But it's not really just one person. However, one person is able to really jumpstart that saying, and then others hop aboard, and you have the keys to the kingdom of heaven if you just open your mouth and start speaking about it publicly, not in spirit. So that's why I like when John from Denver, the character over there, you gotta forgive me for my disorder that I have. I have a delusional disorder. I think that it's possible that you could be other people on YouTube. I mean, my discernment is on point with everybody else except for John from Denver's for some reason. And but without being direct, without Stephen James directly persecute me like Saul did with David, without John from Denver directly encouraging me, uplifting me, speaking kindly about me publicly like Johnathan did in the Bible towards David, then I wouldn't have anything to go by. I would only be able to go by what how me and Johnathan Clegg communicate through spirit. But through spirit, it's a different language. What's written down is literal words that were said. Now, sometimes I look at Johnathan Clegg as Saul. I looked at as Paul. Is that Paul? Is that Peter? Because when Derek Rose said that Paul, he had a problem trying to basically act like he's Peter, then that goes back to Saul. I mean Esau and Jacob and Esau. But Jacob was trying to act like he was Esau. So is that the same thing? Is Peter and Paul the two thieves on each side of Christ? Because they were, what were they? It was Gestus and Decimus. But I've learned that one person isn't just one person. One soul could be four different people, four different wings around about. Old Testament character, New Testament character. The same person could be male, same person could be a female. You could have Judas Iscariot being the same person as Jezebel herself. And then it's like, you can also have Jezebel herself being the same exact person as Saul in the male form, because of the same thing as Jesus being the same as Elijah, because he had already came and you did what you wanted to him, and just like they did what they wanted with Jesus, they did what they wanted to, and Elijah slaying all those liars, false prophets, and then Jezebel at the end getting all pissed off, and Ahab dying out first. And it's like the channel kind of like, I don't know, kind of like Derek Brose's channel fading out, and Jezebel is still up. And then between the Jezebel of the actual spirit itself of blatant outright threats to my life, like Stephen James has did to me. He reminds me of Jezebel. He reminds me of King Saul. And then and then the acting part, you have the Vicar of Jesus, which is Tyler Mullen, and the Vicar of Lucifer being Stephen James DeShawn. So you also have in that aspect Jezebel and Ahab. However, flip the role. It's like flip, like Inky and Enlil. Inky looks just like Johnathan Clegg. Enlil looks just like Derek Brose. That's the deal. But it's the opposite. Because the one that looks that way would play the other role to confuse the viewers. But not to confuse the viewers per se, but so Christ can find the truth. The Spirit has to find out the truth. So they have to hide so many different angles, and the Spirit of Christ has to sniff it out. And that's what I do. I sniff it out. Just like Christ did. I sniff things out. So, with Derek Brose saying that, it's like, oh, I see that now. That's why. So, Paul, you're the one who's trying to act like somebody that you're not. You're the one who, in all likelihood, was trying to be Christ Jesus, the opposite mirror of Jesus Christ, because you were the Antichrist coming against Christ himself. Saul in the Old Testament coming after David, Saul in the New Testament coming after Christ, and yet who's the one stuck in the middle with you? Saul. The same Saul was the same one going after David, and then the same Saul was the one persecuting Jesus when that was supposedly 1,000 years apart. Did anybody ever put that together? That doesn't make sense. It can't be the same Saul, or it can't be 1,000 years. It has to be 1,000 days. So I got to go by truly what actually happened, what people actually say. And even though I haven't trusted anybody on the YouTube platform because of what Stephen James did to me from the beginning, like Saul did to David, because Saul would be acting as if he's the king, the anointed one, but yet he's not David. So maybe Saul was trying to be the king as if he was David. That's why they wanted a king. So they got a king. And so there's a record of 6 solid years of me and Stephen James DeShawn having words back and forth. First it was, I don't know anybody. Everybody's coming towards me as they're my friend. Then they quickly turned away from, fast. Like as soon as Derek Brose showed up on YouTube, 3 months later, Matthew Daly was coming at me as if that was his bulldog. The giant Goliath type. So I slew him out. And then 5 years afterwards, he gets caught with the child and the Chris Hansen show. So the character, that's what you get for attacking me there, buddy. Even though I know it's all an act, but still, I gotta go by what was actually said, who did what, and what the script is. So Matthew Daly crucifies me for 3 hours after my 11th month and first day being up on YouTube, and then 5 years later, it's like vengeance comes. It's like the Lord's favorable year. All right. So that was one character back then. But Peter was before Paul in his belief system of the Christ. He believed first. And Saul just kept going. Saul took it to the very end, kind of like Jezebel, all the way to the very end. But he did finally conceive and say, "Yeah, David, my son, you know, you're going to be king," and all that. So as I think of where people, when I first came across somebody, John from Denver was about 5 solid years. Because I don't remember, I mean, you may have been around just as a different character commenting. Or you could even have been trolling me, who knows. But what I'm saying is the Johnathan from Denver channel is the one that has always said good things. Even when I attacked you. Just still good things. And then Stephen James, always for 6 years, 5 years solid, all negative. But when you read between the lines in spirit, it's different. So one of them is friendly, almost like a good cop. And then the other one is not so friendly, almost like a bad cop. Good cop, bad cop. But nevertheless, in the Bible itself, there is a Johnathan. And there is a Saul, and there is a David. And then there's God. And so God is the one communicates through everybody. And I'm well aware that before I showed up on YouTube, there's already a David. There's already a Johnathan set up. There's already a Saul. There's already a Jesus. There's all these characters are already there. But that's why their vision fails, because that's not the true vision. Everybody was acting and staged and scripted, and they had a huge purse because they got paid very well to just read their script that they were told not to bring, but they did it anyway. Now I come along, I don't have a script, I don't have a purse, I just don't. I don't know everything. I didn't even know anything coming into this thing. I get attacked by all these devils. I write Stephen James a letter calling him Saul because he was, attacking me. And who else did Saul attack? And you know what? Even towards the end of Saul's life, he lived his life to harass David. So the script is that. So I'm wondering, when Stephen James came across me at first, he's like, yeah, I got him right where I want him. I'm gonna make him believe I'm Asu Emmanuel and King David and Elijah and and everybody. I'm gonna get him to worship me. That's like Lucifer himself, because Saul is the Antichrist. Saul/Lucifer. That's that. I concluded that too. And then Alistair said it the other day, and it's like, I said a lot of things. I thought a lot of things, but I say them out loud first. And I'm not always sure, but I'm sure I could be right. And then just by saying it out loud and I got it right, somebody else will confirm it, because they can. You're allowed to confirm But it's like you can't tell me before I figure it out. But you can confirm it once I'm on the right track to figuring it out. Then you can confirm what I had already believed to be true. And so there's nobody else who has stuck with me by name dropping more than Stephen James and more than Johnathan from Denver. So there's the two, and one of them kind things, other one nasty things. One of them's like Saul, the other one's like Johnathan. And then I have Johnathan Kleck, who for the past 4 solid years, because 5 was John from Denver and 6 was Stephen James. And so after that one time you said you go after Johnathan Kleck now and put him in his place or something like that. Like, all right, fine, I'll do it. I did it for like a week, and I'm like, that's it. I think I'm done with Johnathan Kleck. Nope, he made me, he kept holding on. So, and then so I look at Johnathan Kleck as the other candidate for being that Johnathan type in the Bible. Because to me, whether there's 2 of them on that, a good one and an evil one trying to act like the good one, it's like Peter and Paul. Maybe Paul was trying to act like Peter, and Peter was the good one. And it's like it's the Peter Kleck, and then maybe it's the Paul Kleck who tries to act like Peter, but has like these spiritual threatening words towards me, with like showing my head chopped off to the side and that kind of thing. And he did it again recently after I even said it. And I feel like at times that there's somebody on that channel just has self-preservations. Now, Johnathan Kleck could be saying that he's going to show you stuff that's mind-boggling and impossible and world-changing, and it'll make you question the reality of what things are. And well, yeah, I mean, if you show them the art museum footage like I did today, to only basically the second other human being that was reciprocating of it, besides Chad from work, the supervisor, I showed him for the first time, and very receptive to it. So much so that he's even like, do you think the art museum is a portal? I'm like, well, yeah, but I don't think it's just that. Because I said for him that he should go in the art museum, and he finally went in one time, and then I talked about what I went in there. And I just wind up showing him some videos that I already put together to make it very easy to show these parables. And it's because I show this stuff, there's probably millions of people that have seen it, and you react the same way that he did, but I don't get to see your face. So, and then that's why I asked John from Denver about the one time, what do you think of, you never said anything about what you think of this art museum footage, because I've been showing it relentlessly, and then you finally said what it is. It is what it is. Derek Bros confirmed it. So, and it is some type of a time traveling situation that I'm a part of. So yeah, it was nice to show a physical being that's willing to watch what I'm showing you for the most part. There's always distractions, but I got my point across. And so Saul, but yet Steve's claiming to be King David. But I don't, again, where's the Saul that's been coming against you, unless you're trying to say that I'm Saul? But that's not the case. I'm not Saul. And then where is your Johnathan at? Who's your buddy? Unless you're trying to say that I am Johnathan. I mean, I don't know, because your story just doesn't line up, but my story does. And you do too. You line up more with being Saul than being King David or Peter. But you could be Peter. You could have been the first Peter, and then there's a second Peter, and as Paul, you denied me twice, and then you're like, one more time and you're out of here, as if like, you know, I'm the devil or something. You're rebuking me, like you're Michael the Archangel rebuking me, the devil, and then you're denying me. You rebuked me twice, and it's like you deny me one more time and I'm out of here. So maybe that'll be the time when my channel gets the third strike, and then I'm finished with or I get put back up. Who knows? Whatever happens. I don't care. Whatever happens is supposed to happen. So with Johnathan Click, what he did was he kept me in, you know, with motivation, showing me stuff and talking to me, and me knowing clearly that he is. And then all of his videos are just non-stop communication back and forth for years. The Wooders staying still and just getting started, and the art museum footage, all that stuff. It's like, who are you, Johnathan Click? Are you the second Saul? Or is that your twin? Or are you Peter, who has the keys to the kingdom of heaven, and your twin brother is always trying to get in the way and just but then eventually, or not get in the way, but really put me to the test with my spiritual understanding as to who is who, and you're not the same as the other Johnathan Click I just seen yesterday kind of ordeal. And then in the end, the two become one anyway. And that's the whole purpose. So I've thought, is Stephen James actually Johnathan Click, the second beast, which is the same one, the wounded head, as Saul the first one and then Saul the second one? Or is it that he's a separate individual as Saul himself, the devil, and then Johnathan Click is